It's 5:43 a.m. in Moscow, 1982. Yuri Petrov stands in the hallway wearing nothing but his undershirt and slippers, clutching a towel and a bar of soap wrapped in newspaper. He's been standing here for 11 minutes. Behind the bathroom door, he can hear water running, someone humming, the scrape of a razor against porcelain. His slot started at 5:30. It's now being stolen, minute by minute, by the Sokolov family. Again. In 3 hours, Yuri has to be at the factory. But right now, his entire morning, his dignity, his day, hinges on whether he's willing to knock on that door. And what happens when he does?
The bathroom in a Kommunalka wasn't just a room, it was a battlefield, a courtroom, a place where the veneer of Soviet brotherhood cracked and revealed something raw underneath, the animal need for privacy in a system designed to eliminate it. Picture apartment 47 on Leningradsky Chaussee, built in 1937, 4 families, 14 people total by 1980. One bathroom. Not a bathroom with a toilet, that was separate, a different nightmare we'll get to. Just a bathroom, sink, bathtub, sometimes a small mirror if it hadn't been stolen or broken in one of the incidents. The room measured roughly 2 meters by 2.5 meters, 5 square meters of tile, often cracked, always cold, where 14 human beings had to perform every act of personal hygiene. Anna Vladimirovna, who lived in such an apartment from 1975 to 1989, described the bathroom tile as the color of a bruise, that yellowish green that shows up on skin after the purple fades. The grout had gone black with mold years before she moved in. No amount of scrubbing helped. The small window, painted shut since the 1950s, meant the moisture never left. In winter, ice formed on the inside of that window. In summer, the smell, soap scum, mildew, rust, and something else, something human and indefinable, would hit you before you even opened the door. The bathroom itself was a relic, cast iron, deep, with feet shaped like lion's paws, a leftover from before the revolution, from when the apartment had housed a single wealthy family. By the 1980s, the enamel had worn through in patches, showing the black iron underneath. The faucet leaked. Always. That constant drip, drip, drip became the metronome of communal life. Some people stopped hearing it. Others said it drove them slowly insane. But here's what made it truly Soviet. The bathroom had no lock that worked. Locks were bourgeois. Locks suggested you had something to hide. The original lock had been removed sometime in the 1920s during the first wave of communal conversions. What replaced it was a hook-and-eye latch that could be opened from the outside with a butter knife, a nail file, or even a firm push. Everyone knew how to do it. Everyone had done it. Privacy wasn't a right. It was a negotiation that happened every single day.
On paper, the system was beautifully rational, scientific even. Very Soviet. Each family received their time slots based on work schedules and family size. The Petrovs, 5:30 to 6 a.m. and 8 to 8:30 p.m. The Sokolovs, 6 to 6:30 a.m. and 7:30 to 8 p.m. The Mikhailovs, 6:30 to 7 a.m. and 9 to 9:30 p.m. The Kovalevs, who had 3 children, 7 to 7:45 a.m. and 8:30 to 9 p.m. 30 minutes per slot. Fair, equal, impossible. The schedule hung on the inside of the bathroom door, rewritten every few months when someone moved out or someone's work shift changed. It was written in whatever survived the humidity, sometimes pencil on cardboard, sometimes pen on oilcloth, once, memorably, in nail polish on a piece of metal from a food tin. But theory collided with reality, every single morning. 30 minutes sounds reasonable until you break down what actually needed to happen. You had to wash your face, brush your teeth, shave for the men, wash your hair if it was your designated hair washing day, twice a week maximum to conserve hot water, bathe or at least sponge bathe your body, deal with your period if you were a woman, handle any digestive issues that couldn't wait for the toilet's separate schedule. All of this with cold water, usually because hot water came from the building's central system and arrived unpredictably, if at all. Dmitry Volkov, who grew up in a Kommunalka in Leningrad, described his family's morning routine with the precision of a military operation. Father went in at 6 sharp. Shave, wash, out by 6:12. Mother went next. Wash face, brush teeth, quick body wash with a cloth and cold water from the basin we kept in our room heated on the hot plate. She'd be done by 6:23. Then me and my sister would go together until we were about 12. After that, I got 6:23 to 6:30. She got the evening slot with Mother. 7 minutes for a teenage boy to make himself presentable. I learned to shave in under 3 minutes. To this day, I'm done in 3 minutes. My wife thinks it's a magic trick. 7 minutes. That became the real unit of time in Kommunalka life. Not the 30 minutes on the schedule, the actual minutes you could squeeze before someone started pounding on the door. What happened when someone went over? When the Sokolovs took 37 minutes instead of 30? When hot water suddenly arrived at 5:45 a.m., and Elena Sokolova, who hadn't had a hot shower in 11 days, couldn't bring herself to get out. That's when the knocking started. There were different types of knocks. Everyone knew the language. The polite knock, 3 gentle taps, a pause, 3 more. This was the knock of someone who had time, who was willing to wait, who was asking, not demanding. This knock rarely worked. The reminder knock, steady, firm, spaced evenly. Knock, knock, knock. This meant your time is up, you know it, I know it, please be reasonable. The angry knock, rapid, hard, the flat of the hand, not the knuckles. Bang, bang, bang. This meant you're stealing from me, you're disrespecting my family, get out now. The emergency knock, frantic, continuous, sometimes accompanied by shouting. This meant a child was about to wet themselves, someone was sick, there was a genuine crisis. And then there was the knock that wasn't a knock at all. The sound of the butter knife sliding into the gap between door and frame, working the hook up and out of the eye. The sound that meant negotiations had failed. Valentina Grimova still remembers the morning her neighbor opened the bathroom door while she was bathing. She was 17, it was January 1979. The water had finally run hot, a miracle she couldn't waste. She'd been in there for 23 minutes. The Lebedov slot had started at 6:30. At 6:33, she heard the knife in the door. She grabbed for her towel, too late. Mikhail Lebedev, 62 years old, pushed the door open, looked directly at her, and said, "You're in my time." She screamed. He didn't leave. He stood in the doorway, waiting for her to get out of the tub, wrap herself in the towel, and leave. He was asserting his rights. The schedule was the schedule. Her nakedness was less important than the principle. That was the day I understood, Valentina said 40 years later, that privacy was a bourgeois concept. My body, my modesty, these were obstacles to the efficient functioning of the collective. I was supposed to feel ashamed for staying too long, not for being seen. She never took a long shower again. Here's something the schedule couldn't account for. Hot water was never guaranteed. Moscow, like most Soviet cities, operated on a centralized heating and hot water system. The hot water came from district heating plants, traveled through miles of pipes, and arrived at your building when it felt like it. During the summer, hot water was shut off entirely for maintenance, 4 to 6 weeks, every year, like clockwork. The official notice would go up in the building entrance. Hot water suspension from July 15th to August 20. But even outside those designated months, hot water was unreliable. The pipes were old. The system was overtaxed. Some mornings you'd get hot water at 5:30 a.m. Some mornings it wouldn't arrive until noon. Some mornings it never came at all. This created an impossible calculus. Do you use your 30-minute slot when the water is cold, knowing you'll have to boil water in your room later for a proper wash? Or do you wait, hoping hot water arrives, and risk missing your slot entirely when someone else takes it? People developed rituals. Some would wake up at 5 a.m. and put their hand on the bathroom pipe. If it was warm, hot water was running. Then they'd wake their family and rush to get their slots started early while the water lasted. Others kept kettles of water boiling in their rooms at all times, ready to mix with cold water in a basin for a makeshift warm wash. Ludmila Pavlovna, a teacher who lived in a Kommunalka for 18 years, described her winter morning routine. I'd wake up at 5 a.m.,
First, start the electric kettle. We'd managed to get one in 1981, a treasure. While it boiled, I'd put on my wool socks, my robe, everything I owned because the apartment was freezing. Take the kettle to the bathroom during my slot. Pour hot water into the sink basin, mix with cold. Wash my face with that water. Pour more hot water into a cup. Brush my teeth with warm water, not cold, because my teeth were so sensitive from years of cold water that it felt like needles. Then the real operation. Strip down as fast as possible. Wash my body in sections with a cloth dipped in the warm basin water. Upper body first, then lower. Get dressed before I froze. The whole thing took 28 minutes if I was fast. 28 minutes. 2 minutes to spare. But what if the kettle didn't work? What if you forgot to boil the water the night before? What if you tried to warm up water in the bathroom itself and someone accused you of using too much electricity? You washed with cold water. In December, in Moscow, in an unheated bathroom, with ice on the inside of the window. Pneumonia rates in Kommunalkas were 3 times higher than in individual apartments. The medical literature from the period mentions it in passing, clinically. Contributing factors include inadequate heating and prolonged exposure to cold water during personal hygiene activities. Prolonged exposure. Such clean language for standing naked in a freezing room, shivering while you tried to scrub yourself with water that made your skin burn with cold. Knowing that any minute someone might knock, might open the door, might expose you to the hallway where your neighbors would see you.
If the bathroom schedule was hell for men, it was a special circle of hell for women. Menstruation in a Kommunalka wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a monthly crisis of logistics, shame, and vulnerability. Soviet women used cloth rags, homemade menstrual pads washed and reused. Disposable sanitary pads existed, but were rare, expensive, and often unavailable. You made do with strips of old sheets, old towels, cotton fabric scraps. These had to be washed by hand, in the bathroom, during your 30-minute slot. Now add the mathematics, washing menstrual cloths in cold water in a shared sink, knowing that the next person would use that sink to brush their teeth or wash their breakfast dishes. You had to bring your own bucket, fill it with cold water, add whatever soap you had, usually laundry soap, harsh and caustic, and scrub the cloths as quickly and discreetly as possible. Then you had to squeeze them out, wrap them in newspaper or a bag, take them back to your room to hang and dry. But where do you hang blood-stained cloths to dry in a room you share with your husband, your children, possibly your in-laws? Some women hung them behind furniture, hoping they'd dry before they mildewed. Others dried them at night, hanging them on a cord near the window, taking them down before dawn. The whole enterprise required stealth, shame, and a level of planning that exhausted you before your day even started. Maria Petrovna, who came of age in a Kommunalka in the 1970s, described her first period. I was 13. My mother had explained nothing. You didn't talk about these things. When it started, I didn't know what to do. My mother gave me rags and told me to wash them in the bathroom during our evening slot. I didn't know you had to use cold water first. Hot water sets the blood. I used the lukewarm water we had that night. The cloths turned rusty brown, never came clean. The Sokolov woman who went after us complained to the building committee that we were leaving filth in the bathroom. My mother had to apologize for my body, for being female. The bathroom schedule was technically gender neutral, but biology wasn't, and the schedule didn't care. Now let's talk about the other room, the toilet. In many Kommunalkas, the toilet was separate from the bathroom, a tiny closet barely big enough to turn around in, with a toilet and sometimes, if you were lucky, a small sink. If you were unlucky, there was no sink at all, which meant washing your hands required going to either the bathroom or the communal kitchen. The toilet had its own schedule, or rather, it was supposed to. In practice, the toilet operated on a first-come basis that created its own unique form of psychological warfare. Unlike the bathroom, where the closed door and running water gave you some acoustic privacy, the toilet provided none. The walls were thin, the door gaps were wide. Everyone in the hallway could hear everything. Every sound, every moment of bodily function that humans are wired to hide became public knowledge. Sergei Antonov described the coping mechanisms. We'd developed a code. If you needed to use the toilet for solid business, you'd try to go during times when fewer people were home. Early morning before everyone woke up, late at night. Some people held it in all day until they got to work. Used the factory toilet instead. My father developed chronic constipation from this. His body simply stopped cooperating because he'd trained it to never relax at home. The toilet paper situation deserves its own analysis. Western-style toilet paper, soft, perforated, on a roll, was rarely available. What you got instead, if you got anything, was newspaper cut into squares and hung on a nail. The ink came off on your skin, the paper was rough. Sometimes people used pages from old books, magazines, propaganda pamphlets. But here's the catch. Toilet paper was a personal expense. Each family was responsible for their own. This meant some families had newspaper squares, some had actual toilet paper they'd acquired through connections or on the black market, and some had nothing at all and had to ask their neighbors. The asymmetry created resentment. The Petrovs, who always seemed to have real toilet paper, were suspected of theft or black market dealings. The Sokolovs, who used newspaper, were judged as slovenly. The Mikhailovs, who occasionally ran out entirely and had to knock on neighbors' doors to ask for paper, were pitied and resented in equal measure. Olga Mikhailova, the youngest daughter of the Mikhailov family, remembered, "I was 8 years old when I had to knock on the Petrov door to ask for toilet paper. Mrs. Petrova gave me 2 squares. 2. She counted them out in front of me. I had to go back twice. By the 3rd time, she told me my mother needed to plan better. I was 8. I wanted to die from shame." 2 squares of toilet paper became a symbol of everything wrong with communal living. The way scarcity turned neighbors into enemies, the way basic human dignity could be measured out in fractions, the way children learned that their bodies were inconvenient burdens on the collective.
Every Kommunalka had its breaking point stories. The incidents that escalated from bathroom schedule disputes into something that required police, building committees, or in extreme cases, resulted in one family being forced to move. In apartment 34 on Varshavsky Prospect, the Kozlov family, father, mother, teenage son, had been feuding with the Baranov family over bathroom times for 3 years. Small violations. The Baranovs running 5 minutes over, the Kozlovs leaving water on the floor, passive-aggressive notes left on the schedule, complaints filed with the building manager that went nowhere. Then came the morning when Viktor Kozlov discovered someone had defecated in the bathroom sink. Not an accident, not a plumbing failure, deliberately in the sink during the Kozlov family's morning slot. The police were called. The building committee held an emergency meeting. No one admitted to it. The Kozlovs accused the Baranovs. The Baranovs denied it, accused the Kozlovs of staging it for attention. Other families took sides. The apartment split into factions. The investigation went nowhere. There was no evidence, no witnesses, no confession. But the damage was done. The Kozlovs requested an emergency transfer. It took 14 months to process. 14 months of living in an apartment where someone, some neighbor they passed in the hallway every day, had done that. 14 months of wondering who hated them enough. They never found out. Other breaking points were quieter, but just as devastating. People stopped speaking to each other for years over bathroom disputes. Friendships that had lasted decades ended because someone's child had taken too long in the shower. Marriages were strained because one spouse couldn't handle the constant negotiation, the daily humiliation, the erosion of every boundary. Pavel Smirnov, who lived in a Kommunalka from 1970 to 1987, described the toll. "My wife developed anxiety, clinical anxiety. She couldn't use the bathroom without having a panic attack first. She'd stand outside the door for 10, 15 minutes, working up the courage to go in, terrified someone would knock, someone would judge her, someone would be angry. We tried to get a doctor to certify her condition so we could request a transfer. The doctor told her to stop being so bourgeois about personal space. Everyone manages, he said. You can too. She started using the bathroom at her workplace exclusively, held everything in at home. Her health deteriorated. When we finally got our own apartment in 1987, she cried in the bathroom for an hour. Just cried. Because she could lock the door. Because no one would knock. The bathroom broke people in ways that were hard to articulate. It wasn't just inconvenience, it was the daily erosion of self. The constant reminder that your body, its functions, its needs, its rhythms, mattered less than the collective schedule. That your privacy was an obstacle to overcome, not a right to protect. Children born into Kommunalkas grew up with a distorted sense of normal. They didn't know that bathrooms could have locks that worked, that you could shower without watching the clock, that you could sing in the shower, sit in the bath until the water got cold, wash your hair twice if you wanted to. These concepts were foreign, bourgeois, wasteful. Instead, they learned the schedule before they learned to read. They learned to wash their faces in under 60 seconds. They learned to hold their bladders for hours, timing their bathroom needs around the slots. They learned that their bodies were public matters, subject to community review and judgment. Natalia Sokolova, born in 1975, described her childhood realization. I was 11 when I visited my grandmother in her individual apartment. She had her own bathroom, just hers. I didn't understand at first. I asked her when her time was. She laughed and said, "Any time I want, darling." Any time. The concept was so foreign, it took me days to accept it. I kept looking for the schedule. I kept timing myself, rushing through my shower even though no one was waiting. My grandmother noticed. She sat me down and said, "Take your time. Use as much hot water as you want." I cried. I was 11 years old, and I cried because I could take a long shower. Children also learned the politics of the bathroom earlier than they should have. They learned which neighbors were kind, which were rigid, which could be negotiated with, which would report their family for violations. They learned to be quiet in the morning, to never complain about the cold water, to pretend they didn't see when their mother had to wash menstrual cloths in the sink. Some children developed phobias, refused to use the communal bathroom at all, held everything in until they got sick. Parents faced impossible choices, force the child to use the bathroom and risk psychological damage, or let them use a bucket in the room and risk the shame, the smell, the complaints from neighbors. Mikhail Lebedev Jr., who grew up in a Kommunalka in the 1960s and 70s, reflected, "I have 3 children now. They live in America. They have their own bathrooms, their own showers. When my grandson complains about having to share a bathroom with his sister, I want to laugh and cry at the same time. He has no idea, no concept of what sharing actually means. I should be happy about that. I am happy, but there's also this strange grief. He'll never understand a fundamental part of my childhood. The bathroom schedule was more important in my young life than school, than friends, than anything. It shaped how I think about time, about space, about other people. And he'll never know what that was like." Humans are remarkably adaptable. Even in the bathroom schedule hell, people found ways to survive, to carve out small victories, to reclaim pieces of dignity. Some families installed small sinks in their rooms, illegal, but possible if you knew someone who could do the plumbing work off the books. These room sinks weren't for bathing, but they meant you could wash your face, brush your teeth, handle small hygiene tasks without entering the bathroom wars. If you got caught, you'd be fined and ordered to remove it. Most people took that risk. Others developed elaborate systems of reciprocity. The Petrovs would give up their evening slot to the Sokolovs in exchange for extra morning time on Thursdays. The Mikhailovs would watch the Kovalev children in the evening in exchange for bathroom priority when someone was sick. These informal contracts held Kommunalkas together, created islands of cooperation in the sea of conflict. The black market for bathroom time was real. Some people paid money, real rubles or goods, for extra time or better slots. A bottle of vodka might buy you the morning slot for a week. A pair of stockings might get you priority when guests were visiting. The exchanges were subtle, never discussed openly, but everyone knew they happened. Some people simply gave up on certain types of hygiene. Hair washing became a monthly event instead of weekly. Full-body baths became rare luxuries saved for special occasions. The Soviet concept of cleanliness adjusted to match reality. You did what you could with what you had, and you didn't judge others for doing the same. But the most common adaptation was psychological. You learned to stop caring. You stopped being embarrassed when someone knocked while you were naked in the tub. You stopped feeling ashamed when you had to rush through washing because your time was up. You developed a thick skin, a sense that privacy was an illusion anyway, that the Western obsession with personal space was just another form of decadence. Or you pretended you'd stopped caring. You went through the motions of not caring. But late at night, in your shared room with your family breathing around you, you dreamed of a bathroom with a lock that worked, a shower with unlimited hot water, time that belonged to you alone.
Soviet propaganda in the 1970s and 80s emphasized collective living as morally superior to Western individualism. Sharing was portrayed as virtuous, communal life as the natural expression of socialist brotherhood. Americans, with their single-family homes and private bathrooms, were depicted as lonely, isolated, atomized. But people who lived in Kommunalkas knew better. They'd seen foreign films, read smuggled magazines, heard stories from the few people allowed to travel abroad. They knew that in the West, families had their own apartments, their own bathrooms, their own lives. The cognitive dissonance was crushing. You were told you were living in the most advanced, progressive society on Earth, a society that had eliminated the bourgeois concept of private property and created true equality. And yet you were standing in a freezing hallway at 5:43 a.m., waiting for a bathroom, wondering if today was the day you'd finally snap and start screaming. Andrei Volkov, an engineer who traveled to Finland in 1986 as part of a technical delegation, described his hotel room experience. I locked the bathroom door, just to see if it worked. It did. I turned on the shower. Hot water came immediately. I stood there for 20 minutes, maybe longer. Just stood there with hot water running over me, not washing, just existing in that space. When I came out, I sat on the bed and cried. I was 43 years old, a ground man, an engineer, crying in a Finnish hotel room because I'd experienced a basic human right for the first time. He went back to Moscow, back to his Kommunalka, back to the schedule. He never spoke about Finland to his neighbors. What would be the point? It would only make the reality harder to bear. The tragedy wasn't just the living conditions, it was the gaslighting, being told that what you were experiencing, the daily humiliation, the erosion of dignity, the bathroom wars, was actually liberation, that privacy was selfish, that wanting time alone in a bathroom made you a bad socialist. Some people believed it, or at least pretended to. Others quietly saved money, made connections, worked every angle trying to get their name on the years-long waiting list for an individual apartment. The waiting lists were a joke. 10 years, 15 years, sometimes never. Priority went to families with many children, to veterans, to those with connections in the housing committee. Everyone else waited. And while they waited, they lived by the schedule.
The Kommunalka system didn't end abruptly. It faded slowly through the late 1980s and 1990s as the Soviet Union collapsed and Russia began the chaotic transition to something else. The massive housing construction programs of the 1960s and 70s, Khrushchev's Khrushchevki apartments, had finally produced enough individual housing to begin emptying the Kommunalkas. Families who'd waited decades finally got their names called. They moved out, into small but private apartments, 5-story concrete blocks with paper-thin walls and faulty plumbing, but yours alone. The last residents of the old Kommunalkas were often elderly, people who'd lived there for 50, 60 years and couldn't imagine living anywhere else. They'd outlasted their neighbors, inherited larger spaces as others left, and sometimes, ironically, found themselves alone in apartments that had once held 7 families. The bathroom schedule, maintained for decades, became obsolete. The schedule paper, yellowed and torn, stayed on the wall anyway, a monument to nothing. Some Kommunalka still exist today. In St. Petersburg, in Moscow, in other Russian cities, there are still people living in communal apartments, still negotiating bathroom time, still maintaining schedules. They're mostly the very poor, the very old, those who fell through the cracks of privatization. Their world is both the same and completely different. The physical structures remain, but the Soviet context that created them is gone. Marina Sokolova, who we met at the beginning, finally moved out of her Kommunalka in 1991. She was 63. She'd lived there since 1952, 39 years of bathroom schedules, of negotiations, of cold water and thin walls, and the constant presence of neighbors. Her daughter asked her what the first thing she did in her new apartment was. "I went into the bathroom and I locked the door, and I sat on the edge of the bathtub for an hour, just sat there, in silence, alone. And I realized I didn't know how to be alone anymore. I kept waiting for someone to knock."
The bathroom schedule in a Soviet Kommunalka was never just about logistics. It was about what happens to humans when you remove the possibility of privacy, when you turn every bodily function into a negotiated political act, when you tell people that their need for personal space is a moral failing. It was about the 1,000 tiny humiliations that add up over years into something that changes you at a cellular level. The way you relate to your body, the way you relate to other people, the way you understand your place in the world. Yuri Petrov, who we met standing in that hallway at 5:43 a.m., eventually moved to Germany in 1994. He's in his 70s now. He still wakes up at 5:30 a.m., still takes exactly 7-minute showers, still feels a flutter of panic when he hears someone knock on a door, any door, even though he lives alone. "You think you leave it behind," he said. "The Kommunalka, the schedule, all of it. You get your own place and you think, I'm free now. But you're not. It's in you. The way you move through space, the way you listen for sounds, the way you cannot, even now, even after 30 years, take a long shower without guilt. The bathroom schedule ended, but it never ended, not really. The smell of boiled cabbage and unwashed laundry, the sound of water dripping, the feel of cold tile under your feet, the knock on the door. These sense memories remain for everyone who lived through it, a generation shaped by the architecture of their bathrooms, by 30-minute slots, by the constant negotiation between human need and collective control. They survived it. They adapted. They found ways to be human in a system designed to make humanity inconvenient. But they remember. Every single morning when they wake up, they remember. And if you ever wondered what privacy really means, what it costs when it's taken away, ask someone who had to live by the bathroom schedule. They'll tell you. They remember everything.